I want you to picture this scene with me. Imagine a cemetery. It's damp, sort of a dim autumn day in New Jersey, maybe around 1927.
Okay.
There's a small group there, investigators, a pathologist, and they're gathered around this grave, one that's just been opened 5 years after the burial.
Right.
They're there to exhume the body of a young woman, Molly Maggia. The air's cold, everyone's pretty tense, and when they finally manage to, pry open the casket lid in that gloom,
What happened?
well, there's this collective gasp. Because the remains inside, 5 whole years after she died, are actually giving off this soft, eerie glow.
Wow. It sounds like something straight out of, I don't know, a gothic horror story.
Exactly.
But this wasn't supernatural, was it? It was something else entirely.
No, not at all.
It was science, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lethal science. We are diving deep today into the story of the Ghost Girls, or the Radium Girls as they became known.
These young women, they were so saturated with radioactive material that their bodies, well, they literally glowed in the dark.
And that was before their bones, often starting with their jaws, just began to crumble, to disintegrate while they were still alive. The newspapers actually called them the living dead.
And tragically, it fit.
It really did.
So our mission in this deep dive, what we want to unpack is this fundamental contradiction, right? How this bright, modern scientific promise, the element radium, turned into a deadly poison.
All because of, well, decades of corporate neglect and, frankly, deliberate deception.
And we're going to detail the incredibly courageous legal fight these women waged, literally from their deathbeds, a fight that truly changed labor law and set up safety standards that protect millions, including you, right now.
Yeah, and to really grasp the tragedy, you kind of have to rewind a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the turn of the century, radium, discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie. It wasn't seen as this, toxic hazard at first.
No, quite the opposite.
Exactly. It was seen as revolutionary, boundless energy, a miracle element, a cure-all even. It symbolized this bright, clean, atomic future long before anyone thought about the bomb.
The hype was just immense. I mean, it wasn't just scientists buzzing about it.
No way. Companies saw big money, and they started putting radium into all sorts of consumer goods, probably genuinely believing it was good for you, that it gave you vitality.
Think about this. Radium water tonics to cure everything.
Ah.
Radium cosmetics for that youthful glow. It was even in things like butter and toothpaste.
It's wild to think about now.
It really is. It just completely embodied this idea of a bright scientific future. It was meant to heal people, not kill them.
And that context is so crucial. This isn't just some quirky historical footnote about a dangerous element. It's a terrifying lesson, really, about the gap that can exist between what a company knows and what it tells its workers.
And the victims, these young women, they ended up having to use their own decaying bodies as the ultimate proof.
Yeah, the ultimate evidence to hold these powerful companies accountable and to force the legal system to actually recognize these slow-motion industrial diseases. They uncovered a truth the corporations fought tooth and nail to keep buried.
So let's set the scene a bit more. Put ourselves in the shoes of these young women. We're talking the 1920s in America. The jazz age, right?
Right. Flapper dresses, booming industry. This idea of new freedoms for women.
But that freedom, it was pretty limited, wasn't it? Especially if you were working class.
Oh, absolutely. The reality of work for most women was incredibly grim. If you needed a job, your options were, well, bleak.
Like what?
You were probably looking at a textile mill, 12, maybe 14 hours a day, surrounded by deafening machines, the air just thick with lint, horrible for your lungs.
Or maybe a garment sweatshop.
Yeah, hunched over a sewing machine in some crowded room, maybe fined if you even talked. And the pay.
Terrible, I assume.
Records show the average wage for women in those kinds of factory jobs was only about $17 a week.
$17.
Which, as one report at the time put it, was basically one remove from actual starvation. Barely enough to survive, let alone thrive.
Yeah.
You were trapped.
So, okay, against that backdrop, the United States Radium Corporation, USRC, opens up in Orange, New Jersey. And later, Radium Dial in Ottawa, Illinois. The job they offered must have seemed like a miracle.
It really did, and they marketed it cleverly.
How so?
It wasn't presented as dirty factory work. Oh no, they called the workplace a studio.
Studio. That sounds artistic, clean,
Yeah.
delicate.
Exactly. Miles away from the noise and grime of a typical plant. But the real hook, the thing that offered real independence, it was the money.
Because radium was so valuable.
Extremely valuable. So the company could afford to pay the girls, who had the fine motor skills needed for this tiny work, very well. A dial painter could easily make over $20 a week. Some even hit $30 or more because they were paid by the piece.
$30 a week, that's almost double the average factory wage.
It was astronomical for a young woman then. It put these dial painters, many just teenagers, into the top 5% of female wage earners in the whole country.
Wow. Okay, so that kind of money in the Roaring '20s, that meant real freedom.
It meant everything. Fashion, going dancing, helping their families, and just this sense of independence, of pride that other working girls just didn't have. It was the job to get. Truly elite.
And the work itself, what exactly were they doing in this studio?
They were using these tiny, delicate camel hair brushes, and they were painting luminous numbers onto watch dials. Some of these dials, especially for military use, were incredibly small, maybe 3.5 centimeters wide.
Yeah.
Required real precision.
And the paint was that glowing stuff.
Yep, marketed as undork. It was this mixture, sort of magical seeming, of radium dust, zinc sulfide, and gum arabic as a binder.
And there was a patriotic angle, too, wasn't there? Especially early on.
Yeah, during World War I, these luminous dials were vital. Soldiers needed to see their watches and instruments in the dark trenches. So the girls felt like they were doing something important, something high status.
Okay, but then there's this strange, almost unbelievable part. The glow itself. The ghost girls thing.
Right. The danger wasn't hidden exactly. It was just misinterpreted, seen as harmless magic.
Because the radium dust, it was everywhere in the studio, right? It wasn't contained.
Not really.
Yeah.
It settled on their hair, their skin, their clothes. So when they left work at dusk, they literally glowed.
Yeah.
Softly, like fireflies.
And they liked it.
They loved it. It was like a badge of honor, part of the glamour of having this amazing job.
The sources say they'd wear their best dresses to the factory.
Yeah, knowing the dust would make them sparkle when they went out dancing later, it gave them this ethereal look.
Some even painted their fingernails with it. Or their teeth.
Mm-hmm. Playfully, before a date. Aiming for this dazzling smile. One girl apparently joked she wanted a smile that would knock him dead.
Oh, that's chilling.
Heartbreakingly prophetic, isn't it? They had absolutely no idea that the very source of their glamour was also signing their death sentence. So how did we get from this glamorous glow to the grave? It hinged on this one specific technique, a routine that wasn't just allowed but actually encouraged, even enforced by management.
Right.
Because it was faster. And it saved material, maximized profit.
Okay, tell us about this routine. This is the lip dip paint method we hear about.
That's the one. So those camel hair brushes were incredibly fine. But painting tiny numbers all day, they'd naturally fray, lose their sharp point.
So you need to reshape them constantly.
Exactly. Now, normally you might wipe it on a cloth, maybe dip it in water or solvent. But the company didn't like that.
Why not?
Because radium was incredibly expensive. Wiping the brush wasted tiny bits of this precious glowing powder. So they instructed the girls on a different method.
Which was?
To use their mouths. Moisten the bristles between their lips, use their tongue to twist the brush back into that perfect fine point.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So the routine became lip. Dip into the paint, paint the tiny number over and over, maybe hundreds of times a day.
And every single time they put that brush to their lips.
They were swallowing a tiny dose of radium, microdosing themselves with poison, day after day after day.
Did none of them question this? Did they think it was safe?
Oh, they asked. They definitely asked. We know Maine Cubberly, for example. She went to our manager, Mr. Savoy. She said something like, "You don't want to put anything in your mouth that's going to hurt you."
And what did he say?
He assured her it was totally harmless. In fact, he apparently claimed it was good for them, said it would put roses in their cheeks.
Put roses in their cheeks. Unbelievable.
Think about the power dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Young women trusting their bosses, these authority figures, they're being told it's not just safe, it's practically healthy.
And in the Illinois factory, it was even worse.
Yeah. In Ottawa, they took the deception up a notch. To quiet any fears, especially among new hires, one of the instructresses would actually perform this little show.
A show?
She'd take a spatula, scoop up some of the raw radium powder, and eat it right there in front of them. Like, see? Perfectly safe. A deliberate performance to enforce the technique.
Eating it. Okay, that's crossing a line from negligence into something much darker.
Exactly. Because this is where the story shifts, really, from tragic ignorance maybe to calculated corporate malice. Because there was this horrifying double standard right there in the same building.
What do you mean?
Well, while young women dial painters were being told to literally ingest the paint, the men in the factory, the chemists and scientists handling the raw radium,
They weren't licking anything, I bet.
not a chance. They were working behind thick lead screens, wearing heavy protective aprons, using ivory-tipped tongs to handle the materials, wearing masks.
So the company knew. They knew it was dangerous at higher concentrations.
They absolutely knew. It's chilling. If it was safe enough for the girls to swallow hundreds of times a day, why did the scientists need lead shields and tongs? The contradiction is just blatant.
And it wasn't like they could plead ignorance about radium itself, right?
Not at all. USRC had already published and distributed literature to the medical community talking about the injurious effects of radium exposure, especially through inhalation. They knew the toxicity.
And wasn't there history here? Didn't the Curies themselves have concerns?
Yes. Years before these factories even opened, Pierre Curie himself had said he wouldn't want to be in a room with a kilogram of pure radium. He suspected it would burn off skin, destroy eyesight, maybe even kill him. The inherent danger wasn't some secret.
So if they knew the risks and the men were protected, why force the women into lip-dip paint?
Simple, cold, brutal economics. Profit.
How so?
Cleaning the brushes with rags or water took a little bit longer, slowed down the piece rate work, and crucially, it wasted that incredibly expensive radium powder. Lip pointing was faster and saved material.
So they prioritized speed and cost savings over the health, the lives of these young women?
Completely. They saw their workforce, these young women, as basically trusting, maybe a bit naive, and ultimately expendable. They leveraged that trust to maximize their profits on these watches, especially the lucrative military contracts. It's just profoundly cynical. So that illusion of glamour, the independence, the great pay, it didn't last, did it? The poison started its work.
Yeah.
And it began subtly.
Not with a sudden collapse, you mean?
No, often it was just an ache, something that wouldn't go away. The first recognized victim, widely, was Amelia Mangia, or Molly.
And her story started with?
A toothache. Autumn 1921. Just a bad toothache, seemingly. So she went to her dentist, Dr. Neff. He did the obvious thing. Pulled the tooth.
But that didn't fix it.
No, the pain actually got worse. So he pulled another tooth, and another, but the pain just spread. And worse, the empty sockets where the teeth had been, they wouldn't heal.
What happened instead?
They turned into these incredibly painful, bleeding, infected ulcers. We know now it was necrosis. The tissue was literally dying.
This sounds horrific.
It was. Her condition just went downhill, fast. Crippling pain started in her limbs, too, and her jawbone. It was decaying so rapidly, getting so brittle, that Dr. Neff, the dentist, later described how he could just lift pieces of her jawbone out of her mouth with his fingers.
Just lift pieces out?
Yeah. The decay spread into her throat, her face. Molly Mandia died on September 12, 1922. She was only 24. The immediate cause was a massive hemorrhage.
And the official cause of death they listed?
This is where the cover-up really begins.
Yeah.
Her doctors, probably baffled by these bizarre symptoms, maybe feeling some pressure, they listed the cause of death as syphilis.
Syphilis, but there was no basis for that.
None whatsoever. It was a cruel diagnosis, carried huge social shame back then. And crucially, USRC latched onto it later. They used it to smear her reputation, to deny any link between her job and her death. It was their first big lie. But Molly wasn't the only one.
No, sadly not. She was just the first domino. Soon, other dial painters started showing the same grotesque symptoms, teeth just falling out, bones fracturing incredibly easily from minor bumps or slips. And this awful jaw disintegration became so common it got its own terrifying name, radium jaw.
As the body count climbed and these stories spread, USRC knew they had a massive problem. So they launched this aggressive, full-scale campaign of disinformation.
How did that play out?
Well, first, just flat-out denial. They insisted there was absolutely no connection between the illnesses and their paint, claimed it was harmless. But the gossip, as they called it, started hurting business. So they had to look like they were doing something.
They commissioned a study.
Yes, from Harvard, no less, in 1924. Seemed very credible.
And what did Harvard find?
They found exactly what you'd expect. The factory air was thick with radioactive dust. The women themselves were measurably radioactive, glowing in the dark, the report noted. It confirmed the link.
So the company published it and changed things.
Are you kidding? They buried it immediately, refused to let it be published, pretended it never happened, and carried on exactly as before.
Wow. Okay, so denial, then burying inconvenient science. What next?
Active fraud. They commissioned their own studies, carefully controlled ones. They hired a man named Frederick Flynn. Now get this. Flynn had a PhD, but it was in philosophy, not medicine.
A PhD in philosophy to investigate medical conditions.
Right. USRC paid him to examine the sick women. And he went public, declaring them all in perfect health, all while deliberately hiding the actual test results, which clearly showed radiation poisoning.
And they pressured others, too. Doctors, dentists.
Immense pressure. They used their corporate clout, threatened lawsuits, professional ruin, anything to stop independent doctors or researchers from releasing data that connected radium to these horrifying illnesses. They were literally fighting the scientific truth.
But the truth eventually found a way out, through one specific person.
Yes, thank goodness for Dr. Harrison Martland. He became the chief medical examiner for Essex County in 1925. He was tenacious, a real pathologist, and he was deeply suspicious of the company's denials. His work was absolutely crucial.
What did Martland do that was so groundbreaking?
He provided the irrefutable proof. First, he figured out how to measure the radon gas, a decay product of radium on the breath of the living women. He used a device called an electroscope. This showed, objectively, the radium was inside their bodies, incorporated into their metabolism.
So it wasn't just external contamination, it was in their bones.
Exactly, and he confirmed that with autopsies. He examined the bodies of deceased workers, including the company's own chief chemist, Dr. Lehman, who's also died strangely. Martland reduced their bones to ash and found the ash was intensely radioactive.
And this leads back to Molly Maggia's exhumation.
Right. That was the definitive moment in 1927. Retrieving her body, seeing that unearthly glow after 5 years, Martland tested her bones, saturated with radium. Game over for the denial. And critically, his autopsy found zero evidence of syphilis. He exposed the company's cruelest lie right there.
So Martland proved the, radium poisoning? Does he figure out the how and why it was so devastating, especially to the bones?
Yes, he did. He explained the mechanism. It's sometimes called the Trojan horse mechanism.
Trojan horse. How does that work with radium?
It's about chemistry. Radium is in the same group on the periodic table as calcium. Chemically, it behaves very similarly. So when the women swallowed the radium paint...
Their bodies thought it was calcium.
Pretty much, yeah. The body needs calcium constantly for bones, right? So it absorbed the radium from their gut, thinking it was this useful mineral. And where does calcium go? Straight into the bones and the bone marrow.
So instead of building strong bones, they were embedding radioactive material right into their skeletons.
Precisely. And once it was locked in there, the radium just kept doing what radium does, decaying. It constantly releases alpha particles. Think of them as tiny, powerful cannonballs being fired off inside the bone structure.
Constantly bombarding the surrounding tissue.
Non-stop, shattering cells, corrupting the bone marrow where blood is made, causing the bone itself to die, the necrosis, and triggering cancers. It was this slow, relentless internal assassination happening minute by minute for years and years. Understanding that mechanism was vital for the legal fight to come.
Okay, so now they have Dr. Martland's science. Hard, irrefutable proof. But getting justice, that was a whole different battle, needing a whole new legal approach. And the fight in New Jersey was really spearheaded by one woman, Grace Fryer.
Grace Fryer, yeah. Her story is just incredible resilience. She was smart, determined. Her father was a union delegate, so she kind of understood the power dynamics. But by the time she really started pushing for legal action...
Radium had taken its toll.
Oh, horribly. That constant internal bombardment had crushed her vertebrae. She had to wear this heavy, solid steel back brace just to sit upright. She was in constant, agonizing pain.
And finding a lawyer wasn't easy.
Almost impossible. For 2 solid years, she went from lawyer to lawyer. They were all too scared to take on a giant corporation like USRC. Finally, in 1927, she found Raymond Barry. He agreed to take the case.
And she wasn't alone.
No. 4 other women joined her in that New Jersey lawsuit. Catherine Schaub, Edna Hussman, Quinn McDonald, and Albina Larice.
And meanwhile, a similar fight was happening in Illinois.
Yes, in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Led by Catherine Donahue against the Radium Dial Company. And Radium Dial might have been even more cynical. Well, when the news about the New Jersey poisoning started to break, the managers in Ottawa told their workers, oh, don't worry about that New Jersey plant. They use some impure ingredient. Our paint uses pure, safe radium.
Pure, safe radium. That's just a blatant lie.
A calculated lie to keep production going. But Catherine and the Illinois women, they faced something else too, something really insidious. Social pressure.
From their own community.
Yeah. Remember, this is hitting during the Great Depression. Radium Dial was one of the only major employers left in Ottawa. People were desperate for jobs.
So when the women spoke out,
they were practically treated like traitors. Neighbors, business leaders, even some clergy. They pressured them, told them to basically shut up for the good of the town's economy. They were shunned, seen as troublemakers, trying to destroy jobs.
That's incredibly isolating. But the press picked up the story.
Nationally, they were dubbed the Radium Girls, and sometimes, grimly, the Society of the Living Dead. The whole country was watching, horrified, as these visibly dying women fought for justice.
That first court appearance in New Jersey, January 1928, it must have been shocking.
Devastatingly so. The 5 women were so frail, so ravaged by the radiation, not one of them could physically raise the right arm to take the oath. 2 had to be carried into the courtroom. They were completely bedridden.
And in Illinois, Catherine Donahue.
Her health was failing rapidly. At one point during a hearing, she actually collapsed. Her body had just wasted away, down to only 71 pounds. They had to continue the trial at her home.
Testifying from her deathbed.
Literally, lying under a sheet, recounting the company's lies and the horrific consequences while she was clearly dying.
Faced with this visual evidence of suffering, what was the company's legal strategy?
Delay. Just stall. They knew the women were dying. Time was their ally. In New Jersey, their lawyers actually managed to get the case postponed until September 1928. The excuse: key witnesses were supposedly on vacation in Europe.
Vacationing in Europe while these women were dying.
Exactly. The strategy was brutally simple. Drag it out long enough, the plaintiffs die, case dismissed.
Did that tactic work?
It sparked huge public outrage in the media. But legally, the women still face this enormous hurdle: the statute of limitations.
Ah, right. The time limit to file a lawsuit.
Yeah, this is a really clever legal part we need to understand. Back then, the law generally said you had about 2 years from the date of injury to file suit. Makes sense for, a broken leg, a burn, something that happens immediately.
But radium poisoning wasn't immediate.
Not at all.
Yeah.
The illnesses often didn't show up for 5, 10, sometimes even 20 years after they stopped working with the paint. By the time they realized they were sick and sued, that 2-year clock had run out years ago. Legally, it looked like they were out of luck.
So how did their lawyer, Raymond Barry, get around that?
He came up with this brilliant, absolutely groundbreaking argument. It basically redefined what an injury means in the eyes of the law. He argued that because the radium was still physically inside their bones, decaying, emitting radiation every single second, the injury wasn't something that happened back in, say, 1918 and was over. No. The injury was ongoing. It was continuous, happening right now as they sat in court.
So the 2-year clock wasn't fixed in the past.
It was constantly resetting. Every day, every minute, the radium was still inside them, bombarding their cells. The injury was reoccurring. The clock started fresh again and again.
That's ingenious. Did it work?
It completely changed everything. That single argument became the foundation for basically all future lawsuits involving diseases that take a long time to develop due to workplace exposure, what we now call toxic torts.
So things like asbestos cases, chemical exposure.
Exactly. Asbestos victims getting sick 30 years later. People poisoned by contaminated water decades after the fact. Even smokers suing tobacco companies. They all owe a huge legal debt to the Radium Girls and Raymond Barry for establishing that principle of ongoing injury. It shifted the legal landscape forever.
And they had scientific proof for this ongoing injury, too.
Absolutely. Thanks partly to Elizabeth Hughes. She was a physicist who'd actually worked at the Radium Company for a time. She brought that electroscope device into the courtroom and measured the radioactive radon gas the women were literally exhaling. Tangible proof of the ongoing internal decay.
Did the company try to discredit her?
Oh, they tried everything. Their lawyers tried to dismiss her findings, even resorted to trying to shame her by calling her a mere housewife to undermine her scientific credibility.
But the science was solid.
Unshakable. Objective, measurable proof. It was really one of the first times the American legal system had to grapple with this kind of slow-burn internal industrial poisoning, proven by science.
Oh, did they win? What was the outcome?
They won, yes. But it wasn't straightforward, and for many it came too late.
What happened in New Jersey?
In New Jersey, the combination of Martland science, the shocking state of the women in court, and the intense media pressure, it forced USRC's hand. They settled out of court in June 1928.
What was the settlement?
Each of the 5 women got $10,000, which, sounds small now, but adjusting for inflation, it's around $183,000 today. Plus, they got a $600 annual pension for life, and the company had to cover all their medical and legal bills.
That sounds like a significant victory.
Legally, it was huge. But personally, most of those 5 New Jersey women died within just 2 years of that settlement. Justice came, but it couldn't save their lives.
And the Illinois case with Catherine Donahue, that took longer.
Much longer.
Yeah.
They finally won their case before the Illinois Industrial Commission in 1938. But Radium Dial played one last, incredibly cynical game.
What did they do?
To avoid paying the judgment, they immediately dissolved the Radium Dial Company. Then they reformed literally blocks away under a brand new name, Luminous Processes, Inc., Same people, same business, just a different nameplate to shield the assets.
How'd they really do that?
They tried. They appealed the verdict again and again, all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. But in 1939, the Supreme Court refused to hear the case. That cemented the women's victory and the legal precedent.
But Catherine Donahue, she didn't live to see that final win.
No, she died before the Supreme Court refused the appeal. She weighed less than 60 pounds at the end. But her fight, her testimony from her deathbed, secured that ultimate justice. It's easy to focus on the corporate greed, the terrible suffering. And that's all true. But if you zoom out, the lasting legacy of the Radium Girls is actually this incredible system of protection that they essentially bought for us with their lives.
Their fight changed the fundamental relationship between companies and workers.
Absolutely. Their cases were really among the very first where an employer was held legally responsible for the long-term health impacts on its employees. They established the right for you, an individual worker, to sue a corporation for causing an occupational disease. That's a cornerstone of modern labor law.
And that public horror, the court cases, the press coverage, it fueled actual reforms.
Directly. The outcry and the legal precedents they set were a massive catalyst for sweeping changes in workplace safety all across the country.
Things we take for granted now.
Things we absolutely take for granted. Their struggle laid the essential groundwork for the creation, much later in 1970, of OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
The federal agency that's supposed to ensure safe working conditions for everyone.
Exactly. OSHA's entire mission ensuring safe workplaces, clean air, limits on toxic exposures owes a direct lineage back to the Radium Girls. Every safety sign you see, every protocol for handling hazardous stuff, every regulation about permissible exposure limits, it's all built on their sacrifice.
But there's another layer to their legacy, isn't there? Something even more direct, scientifically.
Yes. And it's perhaps the most incredible, almost unbelievable part of the story. A contribution forged, quite literally, in their bones.
You mean the data that Dr. Martland collected from studying how they were poisoned?
Precisely. The careful, meticulous scientific data that Martland gathered measuring exactly how much radium, ingested over what period it took to cause specific damage to eventually kill someone. That data became invaluable.
What was it used for?
It was used to establish the world's first concrete safety standards for handling radioactive materials. They figured out the maximum permissible body burden, how much radium a human body could tolerate before suffering catastrophic effects.
So the study of their poisoning led directly to safety protocols.
Directly. And this wasn't just theoretical. This data, these standards derived from the suffering of the Radium Girls, were immediately put to use. They were essential for protecting the scientists and the thousands of workers involved in the Manhattan Project in the 1940s.
Developing the atomic bomb.
Yes. Without the grim data points provided by the Radium Girls' bodies, the scientists building the bomb would have been working almost blind regarding radiation safety. The risk of mass poisoning among those workers would have been enormous.
That is astonishing historical connection. The safety standards for the nuclear age came from women poisoned while painting watch dials.
It's an incredible loop. And those standards, derived from their tragedy, still form a critical part of the foundation for global radiation safety protocols even today. Their bodies, filled with that terrible internal fire, became the unwilling evidence upon which so much modern safety, worker safety, radiation safety, toxic tort law was ultimately built. They fought for a future they themselves would never get to experience.
It's impossible to escape the profound, difficult irony here, isn't it? Their immense suffering became the literal empirical data used to build protections for everyone else. Every safety label, every OSHA regulation, every legal right a worker has regarding long-term illness.
Yeah.
It's like a silent, maybe even slightly glowing echo of their fight.
Yeah. The courage of Grace Fryer, Catherine Donahue, Molly Maggia, all of them. It resonates even now. And it brings us back, I think, to the core dilemma they faced. That choice, it's maybe a question for you listening now to really think about, to internalize the situation they were in.
Put yourself back there. You're a young woman, 1920s, poverty is real, the alternative jobs are grueling, dangerous, pay almost nothing, and then this offer comes along.
The best paying job imaginable for a woman. Glamorous, clean work, they say. The key to independence, a better life for you and your family.
And everyone in charge, managers, instructors, the company doctors, they all assure you emphatically that this glowing paint, it's perfectly safe, maybe even good for you.
What choice do you make? In that moment, with that information, needing that chance, it's a question of trust, survival, and ultimately, tragic, unforeseen consequence, something to really mull over.